Ahoy there, it is your old pal Captain Ducky here with another chapter of Gulliver's Travels. Now, as we last left our good friend Gulliver, he had been set free and signed on and sworn his allegiance to the Emperor of the Lilliputians. And he had learned a few things about their society. And one of the silliest things that he learned was that you get ahead in this little society by doing circus tricks on a high wire. That is how they choose who is to be the leader and who is not. What a wonderful, silly place he is living. So let us see what happens in chapter 4. The first request I made after I had obtained my liberty was that I might have license to see Mildendo, the metropolis, which the Emperor easily granted me, but with a special charge to do no hurt either to the inhabitants or their houses. The people had notice by proclamation of my design to visit that town. The wall which encompassed it was 2 feet and a half high and at least 11 inches broad, so that a coach and horses may be driven very safely around it, and it is flanked with strong towers at 10-foot distances. I stepped over the great western gate and passed very gently and sidling through the 2 principal streets, only in my short waistcoat for fear of damaging the roofs and eaves of the houses with the skirts of my coat. I walked with the utmost circumspection to avoid treading on any stragglers who might remain in the streets, although the orders were very strict that all people should keep in their houses at their own peril. The garret windows and tops of houses were so crowded with spectators that I thought in all my travels I had not seen a more populous place. The city is an exact square, each side of the wall being 500 feet long. The 2 great streets which run across and divide it into 4 quarters are 5 feet wide. The lanes and alleys, which I could not enter but only viewed them as I passed, are from 12 to 18 inches. The town is capable of holding 500,000 souls, and the houses are from 3 to 5 stories. The shops and markets are well provided. The Emperor's Palace is in the centre of the city where the 2 great streets meet. It is enclosed by a wall of 2 feet high and 20 feet distant from the building. I had His Majesty's permission to step over this wall, and the space being so wide between that and the palace, I could easily view it on every side. The outward court is a square of 40 feet and includes 2 other courts. In the innermost are the royal apartments, which I was very desirous to see, but found it extremely difficult, for the great gates from one square into another were but 18 inches high and 7 inches wide. Now, the buildings of the outer court were at least 5 feet high, and it was impossible for me to stride over them without infinite damage to the pile, though the walls were strongly built of hewn stone of 4 inches thick. At the same time, the Emperor had a great desire that I should see the magnificence of his palace, but this I was not able to do till 3 days after, which I spent in cutting down with my knife some of the largest trees in the royal park, about 100 yards distant from the city. Of these trees I made 2 stools, each about 3 feet high and strong enough to bear my weight. The people having received notice a second time, I went again through the city to the palace with my 2 stools in my hands. When I came to the side of the outer court, I stood upon one stool and took the other in my hand. This I lifted over the roof and gently set it down in the space between the first and second court, which was 8 feet wide. I stepped over the building very conveniently from one stool to the other, and drew up the first after me with a hooked stick. By this contrivance I got into the inner court, and lying down on my side, I applied my face to the window in the middle stories, which were left open on purpose, and discovered the most splendid apartments that could be imagined.
There I saw the Empress and the young princes and their several lodgings, with their chief attendants about them. Her Imperial Majesty was pleased to smile very graciously upon me, and gave me, out of the window, her hand to kiss.
But I shall not anticipate the reader for further descriptions of this kind, because I reserve them for a greater work, which is now almost ready for press, containing a general description of this empire, from its first erections through the long series of princes, with a particular account of their wars in politics, laws, learning, and religion, their plants and animals, their peculiar manners and customs, with other matters very curious and useful. My chief design at present being only to relate such events and transactions as happened to the public or to myself during a residence of about 9 months in that empire.
One morning, about a fortnight after I had obtained my liberty, Reldersal, principal secretary, as they styled him, for private affairs, came to my house, attended only by one servant. He ordered his coach to wait at a distance, and desired I would give him an hour's audience, which I readily consented to on account of his quality and the personal merits, as well as of the many good offices he had done me during my solicitations at court. I offered to lie down that he might the more conveniently rate mine ear, but he chose rather to let me hold him in my hand during our conversation. He began with compliments on my liberty, said he might pretend to some merit in it, but, however, added that if it had not been for the present situation of things at court, perhaps I might not have obtained it so soon. For, said he, as flourishing a condition as we may appear to be in to foreigners, we labour under two mighty evils, a violent faction at home, and the danger of an invasion by a most potent enemy from abroad.
As to the first, you are to understand that for above 70 moons past, there has been two struggling parties in this empire under the name Tramexin and Slamexin, for the high and low heels of their shoes, by which they distinguish themselves. It is alleged, indeed, that the high heels are most agreeable to our ancient constitution, but however this be, His Majesty has determined to make use only of low heels in his administration of government, and all offices in the gift of the crown, as you cannot but observe, and particularly that His Majesty's imperial heels are lower by at least a drurr than any of his court. A drurr is a measure about a 14th part of an inch, a very, very tiny bit for someone as large as Gulliver. The animosities between these two parties run so high that they will neither eat, nor drink, nor talk with each other. We compute the Tramexin, or high heels, to exceed us in number, but the power is wholly on our side. We apprehend His Imperial Highness, the heir to the crown, to have some tendency towards the high heels. At least we can plainly discover that one of his heels is higher than the other, which gives him a hobble in his gait. Aye, you heard that right. In Lilliput, the two parties are in a desperate battle between themselves over the high heel shoes that the men wear, and that some of them wear higher heels and some of them lower heels, and it has been a battle for a very long time. Can you imagine having such a silly fight in your country? Let's continue.
Now, in the midst of these intestine disquiets, we are threatened with an invasion from the island of Blefuscu, which is the other great empire of the universe, almost as large and powerful as this of His Majesty. For, as to what we have heard you affirm, that there are other kingdoms and states in the world inhabited by human creatures as large as yourself, our philosophers are in much doubt, and would rather conjecture that you dropped from the moon or one of the stars, because it is certain that 100 mortals of your bulk would in short time destroy all the fruits and cattle in His Majesty's dominion. Besides, our history of 6,000 moons makes no mention of any other regions than the two great empires of Lilliput and Blefuscu, which two mighty powers have, as I was going to tell you, been engaging in a most obstinate war for 36 moons past. It began upon the following occasion. It is allowed on all hands that the primitive mode of breaking eggs before we eat them was upon the larger end. But His Majesty's grandfather, while he was a boy, going to eat an egg, and breaking it according to the ancient practice, happened to cut his finger, whereupon the emperor, his father, published an edict commanding all his subjects upon great penalties to break the smaller end of their eggs. The people so highly resented this law that our histories tell us there have been 6 rebellions raised on that account, wherein one emperor lost his life and another his crown. These civil commotions were constantly fomented by the monarchs of Blefuscu, and when they quelled, the exiles always fled for refuge to that empire. It is computed that 11,000 persons have at several times suffered death rather than submit to break their eggs at the smaller end.
Aye, you heard that right. In Lilliput, the big controversy is either, as we read before, between high heels and low heels, or, even more deadly, which end of an egg you should break open when eating a soft-boiled egg, whether it's the big end or the little end. And thousands of people have died in wars over that. Can you imagine? It is hard to imagine, but let us read on. Many hundred large volumes have been published upon this controversy, but the book of the big Indians have long been forbidden, and the whole party rendered incapable by law of holding employments. Meaning, if you were a big Indian, they wouldn't even let you have a job. Ha! During the course of these troubles, the emperors of Blefuscu did frequently expostulate by their ambassadors, accusing us of making a schism in religion by offending against a fundamental doctrine of our great prophet Lustag in the 54th chapter of the Blundercall, which is their El-Koran.
This, however, is thought to be a mere strain upon the text, for the words are these: that all true believers break their eggs at the convenient end. And which is the convenient end seems, in my humble opinion, to be left to every man's conscience, or at least in the power of the chief magistrate to determine. Now, the big Indian exiles have found so much credit in the emperor of Blefuscu's court, and so much private assistance and encouragement from their private party here at home, that a bloody war has been carried on between the two empires for 36 moons, with varied successes, during which time we have lost 40 capital ships and a much greater number of smaller vessels, together with 30,000 of our best seamen and soldiers. And the damages received by the enemy is reckoned to be somewhat greater than ours. However, they have now equipped a numerous fleet and are just preparing to make descent upon us, and His Imperial Majesty, placing great confidence in your valour and strength, has commanded me to lay this, our account of his affairs, before you.
I desired the secretary to present my humble duty to the emperor, and to let him know that I thought it would not become me, who was a foreigner, to interfere with parties, but I was ready, with the hazard of my life, to defend his person and the state against all invaders. Meaning, he did not think it was his place to get in the middle of a fight between Lilliputians, But Gulliver promised he would defend Lilliput from Blefuscu's invasion, and by golly, he was going to do it. And that's the end of chapter 4. What do you think? Have you ever heard of any sillier disagreements ever in the whole wide world than the big Indians and the little Indians? Why don't you tell me about it in the comments? Please leave a like and share. Leave a comment if you dare. And join me next time when we'll take a voyage into the next chapter of Gulliver's Travels. Until then, may a fair wind meet you. Yar!